So, you want to be a code reviewer? I don't think so. What's up, YouTube? In this video, I'm going to be talking about, actually, this is a series. So this is the first part of the series, but the series is about, so you want to be a code reviewer. In this video, I'm going to be essentially setting the stage for the coding side and the code reviewing side. And then in the following episodes, I'll be just showing you pieces of code and then go through the different issues and the reasons for why they are issues. Some may be obvious, others may not be obvious. And these are sort of real world code, as in their actual code I've seen or written over the years that I would today consider not good code. And some of them are subtle, some of them are, it's not obvious, but then I'll also give you the reasons for why I think there are issues with the code. But in this video, it's more about talking and setting the stage for the coder and the code reviewer side, because this is a game that two sides plays, not a one-sided game. So to start with, well, if you want to be a code reviewer, I'm hoping your company or the organization you're in does have code reviews. If not, I would question why you don't have code review, why you don't have a process where there's code review as part of the process. Essentially, the indicators for when you need to be doing code reviews is, bad quality code is, and it takes time to manage the code. It takes time to add a feature because it's so convoluted, it's just not manageable or maintainable, the code. Fixing one bug here causes two bugs over there. There are performance issues and on and on and on. So these are all the telltale signs for when your system, when your code base needs to have code reviews done on it every time somebody writes code. Now, of course, it may be too late because it could be such a mess that it's just not possible. But I'm hoping that if not in the current project, in the next one, at least those of you watching this video would be proponents, would be advocates for implementing a code review process in your organization or on your team. Right? I think it's very, very valuable. There are pros and cons to it, but there are more pros than there are cons. The cons really are, it takes a little more time for you to be done, right? So, and of course, the reason that code goes bad, the quality drops, is you're under pressure. You got to write code really quickly. You don't have the time to write tests. You don't have the time to do the code reviews and on and on and on. There's just lots of issues like that. But there's also a coding style problem. You start having conditional statements to add in new features and you think, well, I can just put a conditional here and I can do this and else I can do that. Next, you got a huge amount of conditional statements in your code. It becomes unmanageable because everyone is adding a feature through some sort of a conditional statement or what we call a feature switch. This is a config setting in the config files. And we just think, wow, this is just really cool. I can just turn the switch on and turn the switch off and the feature gets turned on and the feature gets turned off, and it's a nightmare. So there are a lot of aspects about code, the way we write code and the way of course, the systems are designed that causes this problem to start with. But in this video, I want to talk about what do you do as a code reviewer, and the flip side of that is, of course, is then somebody's writing the code. So if you're writing the code, then what you as a coder should be doing to, I guess, help out with the code review process. But essentially, it's more like you got to be a damn good coder to be a code reviewer. That's just my take on it. And yes, my standards are high. Maybe they're unachievable even for me, but I'm always trying to get there. People I've worked with where it's okay. That's fine. It's not a big deal. No. If something is wrong, it's just wrong. I mean, it's not like there's a debate to be had about it. Maybe a small thing. A lot of people say, but you're nitpicking on things. Yep. That is what it is. I was once accused of, they said, Shiv, people are saying you're very nitpicky about the small things. So I just looked at them and didn't say much. And they said, like, don't you have anything to say? And I said, well, if it's a small thing, then fix the goddamn thing. Why are you complaining about small things? I mean, you should fix it. Don't give it to me and then tell me I should ignore it. Right? So there's two sides to the coin. I totally understand that. And this video is about, hopefully, both sides. But really, since the title says, so you want to be a code reviewer, this series is all about making you a code. How do you get there? What do you need to be looking for? How do you write your own code? On my team, you don't become a code reviewer unless I don't find any issues with the code for 3-4 sprints at a time. Then you're a code reviewer. That's a very, very high bar, an extremely high bar. Maybe you don't want to set such a high bar in your organization. That's up to you. This series is about getting to that point where your code is so solid. I don't mean solid, okay? I don't believe in the solid things. It's so good that I or any other person cannot find fault with that code, reasonable faults with that code. Now you can be a code reviewer. So this series is about getting you to that point. Of course, the question you might be asking yourself, but why would you want to be doing code reviews? What's the value or purpose of code reviews? This is my take. When you're writing code, you're not necessarily thinking about the readability, the maintainability of this code. You're just writing it. You're getting the stuff to work. If you don't take a second or a third pass by reading the code you just wrote, so let's say it's working now and it took you a day, 2 days to get it there because it's really complicated stuff. So now you got it to work. Don't just move on to the next thing. Spend time and read that code. Read it once, read it twice. Think of it from the perspective of the code reviewer. Think of it from the perspective of your future self. If you were to look at this code 3 months from now, 3 years from now, would you understand it? Or would somebody have to explain it to you? And I'm talking about the code in and of itself. You may not understand the bigger picture. Why is this code even here? Or why do they need to do this? Whatever the case may be, you're not looking at that part. This code here, will I be able to read this code? That's it, right? The code reviewer has hardly any time to look at that code and in a split second. I mean, that's how I do it. In a split second, I can tell whether this code is readable, maintainable or not. If I have to think about, oh my gosh, what is this doing exactly? I don't have the time. It's not like I don't have the time. I don't want to make the time. The point of a code review or the way you write code really is about making sure that the next person, your future self, whoever it is, your new team member, can read that code in no time. I understand there are some things that are just generally complicated. Yes, sure. But don't make the simple things complicated. I call it don't complify, simplicate. Make the complex things simple. Don't take the simple things and make them complicated. So you'd hear me, well, if you're on my team, you'd hear me saying, don't complify, simplicate. And that's what it means. We are aces at complicating things. Seriously. I think software engineers, especially architects, they are the worst. These people, and I exclude myself from this, by the way, because I don't, even though I'm an architect, I don't believe in sort of doing things the way most people do. I am a simple person. My mind is simple. My brain is, I'm not smart. I like simple things. The moment it gets complicated, I don't have the time. Right now, I'm of course underplaying this. I make it like I don't want to spend time. I don't want to rack my brain trying to understand the code I'm just reading. And that's intentional. When I write my own code, I'm doing the same thing. When I give it that once over or twice over before I send it out to review, I'm looking at that code from the perspective of the reader of the code now, my future self, the new team member, the code reviewer. Are they going to be able to read and understand what I just wrote? So as a coder, you certainly have to take the time to do that. So then the question is nitpicking okay? Well, yes. In my books, yeah. I mean, the nitpicking, first of all, let's just set the stage here. You have certain guidelines, certain practices in your organization, in your team, whatever that is. So there is that standard or that understanding that everyone on the team or the organization has. So within the confines of that, within those guidelines, within those practices, nitpicking is totally okay. Right? I mean, as a coder, I don't want you to find problems. Or that's, at least that's how you should be. As a coder, I don't want you to catch me on those little things. I am really proud of the code I write. I'm sure you are really proud of the code you write. We are all proud of the code that we write. We're all proud of the work we do. Then why let little things ruin the whole picture? Right? Why not take that extra step and look at the code once, twice, 3 times over before submitting it for code review? There's no rush. It'll cost you more time and ego. Send that in and the guy says, or the girl says, how come you left 2 extra lines here? Gosh, why did I do that? It's just not worth it for your own ego. And then the time it takes, the back and forth between the review process and back to you and send it back for another code review. So as a coder, your job is to make sure the code reviewer won't find any flaws. Now, certainly the small things. I don't believe, well, let me restate it. When I see code where the person writing the code or submitting the code is regularly, I don't mean once in a while, regularly missing the small things, I don't have the patience for that. I don't have the patience for that. I mean, what do you want me to tell you that you should have done this little thing here, that little thing there? I just don't get it. I mean, there are standards, there are guidelines. We've agreed to those things. Just follow it. It's just that simple. There may be certain things that a lot of people are missing all the time. Maybe it requires training. Maybe you need to change your guidelines. It could be any one of these things. But at the end of the day, if there are guidelines that have been settled on or agreed upon, and you're part of that organization or the team, you need to ensure your code meets that bare minimum bar. Now, on my channel, I have a video on programming with intent. I'll put a link to it up here. That video is the precursor, is the baseline for being a good coder in my books. Right? Everything I talk about in that video is really that baseline. At the bare minimum, I don't expect you to make these simple problems, or issues, have these kinds of mistakes in your code. So at least for me, maybe you have your own set of guidelines, right? And then there's the bare minimum bar. Like your code, every coder, every person on the team needs to strive to get to that bare minimum, which means the code reviewers, are not spending the time doing or looking at those things, right? Now, some people might say, well, a lot of those things can be automated. Well, some of those things can be. If you look at PWI, and not a whole lot can be automated. Yes, formatting, line spacing, stuff like that. Yes, you can format that, but I have a different take on that too. I'll just say 2 things. One, on my team, you don't have copyrights. What does that mean? Copyrights. You learn something new, just a certain amount of code. Our initial reaction is to, well, I don't quite understand that code right now. I know at a high level what it does, but I won't be able to write this code by myself. So I'll copy paste it, right? You don't have copyrights. Let me just turn off the heater. I'll be back. And the reason you don't have copyrights is simple. You have to learn to write that code. You have to be familiar with that code. You got to be able to write that code in your sleep, inside, backwards, forwards, however. Now, once that code becomes mundane and repetitive for you, you then get the copyrights, meaning copy pasting. So I work differently. I work sort of backwards. The training wheels can be put on after you learn how to cycle. Putting on training wheels before you learn to cycle doesn't help you learn cycling. Once you know how to cycle, and you're so comfortable, but yet every once in a while, you want to leave your hands and check on your phone. I've actually seen people do that on a motorcycle on the highway. Anyway, you get the point. What I'm trying to get across is this. Automation, code formatting, all of that is great. But at the same time, if I were the coder, I would feel like a bit uneasy that I am not able to detect the problems myself and I need the help of the tool to get the job done. How do you become a code reviewer if you cannot see the problems by your eyes, right? So automation is a double-edged sword for this sort of thing. There has to be a certain minimum bar that as a coder, you are able to meet. Because the same thing applies to you when you become a code reviewer. If you don't see the problem, okay, what if the person didn't run that automation before they send the code review? Will you find it? How will you know if you don't know to look for those things? If your eye is not so keen, if you don't have this, I've been called Hawkeye in the past. If you don't see things in a second, there's something wrong here, then what is automation going to help you with? So I understand the value of automation. I certainly, in principle, I agree with and believe in automation. But it's like I said, it's a double-edged sword. I think you need to first learn how to fix the issues yourself. Look at the issues, find them, fix them yourself. Once it becomes a repetitive thing for you, then automation could be a good thing, right? So as I said, it works backwards. You first need to learn how to cycle. And after you learn cycling, you can put on the training wheels. But putting on the training wheels before you know how to cycle is not going to help you be a good cyclist. The other reason you want to be doing code reviews as a process in your organization is you don't want your system to rot. So in the software field, we call it Greenfield and Brownfield. So Greenfield is when you're starting from a clean, brand new project. And Brownfield is when, of course, the system is older, it started to rot. The code has started to rot. How do you prevent your Greenfield project becoming a Brownfield project, right? We all hate those projects. We call them legacy, something or the other. So it should be a pleasure for you to look at code 2-3 years later and find, wow, this code is clean. I understand everything in the system. And I've seen some projects that I've taken a lot of pains to maintain them as Greenfield projects. And the moment I leave the project, it just goes down the tube. It's unfortunate and it will happen. You can't take that personally. But while you're on the team, every coder, code reviewer, your job should be to ensure that this Greenfield project doesn't become a Brownfield project. Or conversely, a Brownfield project is eventually becoming a Greenfield project in that the code is improving, right? So one of the things you'll hear me say on my teams is we always leave the world in a better place than we found it. So even if you haven't written that code, but you see it because you're doing something else in the same class file or whatever, it is your responsibility to fix that code, right? And it goes deeper than that. Let's say you join the team new, right? We've been at the system for 8-9 months. Now you join the team and you find that there are certain things we're doing in the system that could be improved, let's say. And it's just happening in multiple places, right? So you say, hey, Shiv, I've been seeing this sort of thing being done here. And, if you did like that, if you do this like this sort of thing, this will be much better, don't you think? And I said, yeah, now fix it everywhere. That's your bonus. That's your prize. You find something that is going to improve what's already existing in the system, then fix it everywhere. Not just here, everywhere. Now, different teams are different organizations are different. I get that. But as I said, aim for the stars. Maybe you land up on the treetops, right? But if you don't aim for the stars, you're not getting on the treetops. Or you just hit the tree stump. All right. So if you want to be a code reviewer, your coding standards, your standard of coding should be so high that you or others cannot find fault with your code, right? Of course, we're human. We make mistakes every once in a while. Something will slip past our, vision. We're in a rush, under pressure, whatever the case is. But If you make good coding practices a habit, they just come to you. They're just natural. You'll just see the problems as you're writing the code, as you're seeing the code. It's not something you have to work at. When we make something as a habit, it just comes, it becomes automatic. So your aim should be to make sure the code you write is quality, and that quality is a habit. It's not effort. It doesn't take any more time. In fact, today, if you ask me to give you an example of bad code, I actually cannot manufacture that bad code. I can certainly write code that I know I've seen in the past, but what I've written in the past for that matter. But it's not normal, right? You want to get to the point where every line of code you write, whether it's a prototype or actual production code, it doesn't matter. You don't write code sloppy. That's just how it should be. And if you can get there, it becomes natural. It's a habit. And you will see when other code, your own code and other people's code is not fitting in that mold, if you will. Right? That's when you're a code reviewer. That's when you can be or should be a code reviewer. At least now you should be striving to get there. If you're already a code reviewer, you should be striving to get there anyways, right? If you're not there yet. Make the good practices a habit. Your eye for good code will mature and you will start to see things in seconds. And not only in other people's code, your own code. Right? I'm very, very hard on myself. Actually, I'm very, very relaxed with other people. Man, but I am brutal on my own. Whatever work I'm doing, not just coding, I'm just generally like that. So when people tell me, man, you're very strict about this stuff, I'm thinking like, you kidding me? You haven't seen what I do to myself. Right? That's what the job is. To find fault. As a code reviewer, your job is to find fault. There have been people on my team that say, but you never say when things are good. Well, if you didn't hear from me, it's all good. In fact, it's so good, you need to pat yourself on the back. And that's just how it is. If you can get past my code review on like decently complicated things, you've done a fantastic job. But my job is to be looking at fault. Now, you'll see me say things to you, on a separate, when I come by your desk or we're, chatting about stuff. But at the time of code review, you may not hear. And it's unfortunate. Some people say there's a code reviewer etiquette. Be gentle, be nice. And yes, I agree with all of those things. Different people like different things, expect different things, do different things. Right? So we're all human beings. Being nice can have its own problems. Being rude can have its own problems. I'm not saying be rude, but I am direct. I say it like it is. There's no sugar on top. But yes, I am very cognizant of the fact that the coder took days writing this code. This coder is very, very proud of what he or she has delivered for a code review. You need to be sensitive about that effort that has been put in, the time and the effort put in, and the thought process that was put in. You're just looking at code. You don't know how and how much time it took for that person to write this much of code. So yes, you do need to be cognizant of that effort and the time and the ego and everything else. But within limits, it is what it is. Right? So you can have ways to say it. I'm not rude necessarily, but I'll say things like, should this not be this? I'll have the question. Right? Maybe we should use this instead. Have you tried that? That might be better. Now, that's just me saying being nice, but it's not like necessarily an option. Sometimes I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm just saying, have you tried this? Like maybe you should be doing this instead. Right? I don't know myself. I'm not looking in a debugger. I'm just looking at static code. So there are a lot of etiquettes about a code reviewer to be a code reviewer. At the end of the day, be a nice human being, but don't, handhold and cajole. We are all grown-ups, right? Yes, we all have egos. We all are proud of the work we do. But if you don't want to hear bad things about your code from a code reviewer, then you need to improve. That's just how it has to be. You need to improve your coding to get less comments. If everyone's going to be nice about things, then I think that, and I've seen this, it's not like I haven't seen this, then it's like a constant. then I'm telling you repeatedly about the same things over and over again, and I can't be rude, and I can't just put the hammer down and say, just get the damn thing done, right? So there are pros and cons to all of that. At the end of the day, quality of code, good code gives you, as a coder, gives you satisfaction. As a team, gives you satisfaction. That satisfaction grows into being to the place where you're more engaged with the software, with the product, with the company. You own that code. That is your responsibility now. So good code quality gives people, us, the programmers, satisfaction in the work we do. And it gives us a sense of responsibility or ownership for the code, for the product, that software product, being a part of the company, all of that. So it's very, very important to be writing good code. If you haven't figured this out yet, this is what it is. In order to be a good code reviewer, you have to be a solid programmer. That's my take on it. Yes, in organizations, we can force things and say, this, we need at least one code reviewer on this team, or that person just has to be a code reviewer. So we need someone to be a code reviewer. Yeah, I understand that there are some of those constraints where somebody just has to be there. That person may or may not be at the level, but they have to do it anyways, right? But whoever you are, whether you're already a code reviewer or you're wanting to be a code reviewer, your own coding standards have to be super, super high. Now, code reviews are not just about standards and coding and clean code, right? There's a lot more to code reviews than just that. Sometimes you're doing design reviews along with code reviews. Now, I have a bit of an opinion on that as well. Yes, it's not just a code review, it's a design/code review. But the design is at a certain level that's sort of smaller, minor design, right? If it's full out design, that's the wrong time to be doing the design review. The code review is the wrong time to be doing the design review. Your team members or yourself have to know when a certain sort of feature is going to require design before the person starts to write code. Right? You need to sit with that person. If you're the one implementing the feature, you need to call on the seniors, whoever, and say, let's just work on this design. Listen, you might learn a thing or two from other people. Designing in a group of people who are like-minded. Okay, if people come from different angles, it's not going to work, right? If you like dependency injection and I don't, it's not going to work, right? If you like mocking and I don't, same thing's going to happen. We're not going to see eye to eye on many things. But if you're on the team, then I'm hoping everyone's kind of on the same page, whatever that page may be. You need to elicit the help of others, your peers. Maybe you're a senior and you need to get other senior people involved. You're going to learn things by discussing design with other people. And similarly, if you're a senior doing the design, you need to include the mids and the juniors in the design process. Let them get a sense of the whys and the hows and the what fors. That's how you're going to teach them. Because code reviews, another aspect of code reviews, doing code reviews, is teaching. It is your opportunity as a code reviewer to teach people how to write better code or why something is right or wrong. When you would pick this versus that. It's a huge opportunity for that. I use that a lot. For me, I don't even call it a code review, even though we actually use the word code reviews. For me, it's a teaching opportunity. If I don't like something, I'm going to go into a whole story about why something is bad. And I won't just say, just change it because I said so. There has to be reasoning. There has to be examples maybe. So when people are given proper reasoning, proper examples, it kind of goes in their head. They never make that mistake again. So use it as an opportunity to teach. But if it's large design, you need to do that design before you write the code. So code review is not the time to do a design review. Certain design, maybe it's a simple thing and you decide to go this way or that way. I might ask you, how come you went down this path versus that way? If you don't have an answer, I'm going to nail you. You are programming with intent. Everything you do has to have been intentful. Have to have a damn good reason for why you did this. It's not okay to say, I thought. No. You need to have thought about it 10 ways from Sunday and then picked one. So when I ask you why you went down this route, you would have a damn good, clear answer for me. If I find you don't have a clear answer, you haven't thought hard about it. So you need to do that. And similarly, during a code review process, if you find that you're going through that part of a design, then next time, the coder needs to understand that they need to come ask for a design process prior to starting the code. A mark of a good junior level, mid-level software engineer is one who understands when they need help. Just that. Or you see some code, it's not right. Or you've written the code, it's not right. It's working, but it's not right. And you need somebody's help. You need to ask someone. I know this. I just don't know how to fix it. Yeah, at that stage you don't. But you need to recognize that that's a problem. So that's a good mark of a good junior mid-level programmer. So I'm sorry I'm sort of all over the place here, but I'm trying to go into some sort of sequence. I'm trying to follow a process here in my head about starting the coding, doing the design, doing the code reviews, and so on. So it may sound a little... What is the purpose of a code review then? That process? Of course, it's to... What should you be looking for when you are doing a code review? And conversely, as a coder, you need to know what it is that the code reviewer is going to be looking for and why. Right? So it's working both ways in this case. As I said earlier, as a code reviewer, your job is to find the problems. That is what it is. Your job is to find problems. So it can't be helped and it shouldn't be helped. There's no apologies for it. As a team, our aim is to ensure the highest standard of our code quality. Somebody's going to have to be the bad guy, right? So yeah, the code reviewers end up being the bad guy. That doesn't mean they're bad people. It's their job to find fault. And they need to do a damn good job at finding fault. A good code reviewer or a good tester is one that can find the problems. I love it when a tester says, hey, I just found a bug here while doing the test. And oh my gosh, because the team and I spent a lot of time coming up with all kinds of scenarios to ensure that we don't have a problem in our system. And when the tester finds it, it's like, oh my gosh, we have this whole game going on. That's a different thing. But if a tester ever finds a problem that a software engineer has missed, well, you're going to have a bad day in a good way on the team. Anyway, so the job is to find fault. Now, certain faults are things like, is the code in line with your guidelines, coding practices, architectural requirements, and so on and so forth. This sort of the smaller things, the nitpicking. Oh, is it working? I don't know. It bloody well be. It bloody well should be. I mean, I'm not expecting to see if the code is working at the time of a code review. Now, there are certain gates or processes that you go through. Hopefully you run the tests. Hopefully the tests are okay. And now that I've seen your code review, all tests have passed. That's the general understanding, right? But coming to tests and the design thing I was talking about earlier, typically with my team, when a feature is complex, when most features are, unless it's a tweak a little one thing here kind of thing, I'll sit with the devs and the team, and we'll work out all of the test cases, the scenarios that need to be in place for that feature. How will we test it? So the person that's implementing the feature will actually write the not the pseudocode, the real code, the method signature. If you remember from one of my previous videos, the method has certain parts: the class, the method, the scenario, and expectation. So the person will write all of those things out. And we'll also discuss so how will you arrange for that scenario then? If it's complicated, they're going to take notes in the code itself, like by way of comments. How will you assert on it? Same thing, right? So by the time we come out of that room, and maybe a couple of sessions, of doing this, every person that's implementing a feature has written the scenarios that are required to be tested and their expectations. And if there are any special notes about how to arrange something and how to assert something, it's all there. Now, a week later, when you come to me and send me a code review request, I cannot remember what all that feature meant and how it's going to be tested, right? So if the tests are passing, I'm good. It must be working. Do I know you've written all the tests? Well, because we discussed it before. See, while discussing that feature, you're in the zone, you're in the mode, and you understand the business requirements really deep, and you worked out the scenarios. As at the time of doing the code reviews, I'm doing so many code reviews, I don't have the wherewithal to be able to context switch from your code to this code to that code. I would never know if you've implemented all the tests. So that's the wrong time to be seeing if all the tests are in place. I will look at the test code that you've written. I can see if you've written it correctly, and from the arrangement standpoint, I'll get a sense of is that correct or incorrect. But the depth of review is not at that, like, have you got all the scenarios in place? It's more to do with how we've written the tests, because with the understanding that we've already discussed all the scenarios. And what I'm seeing here is the ones we discussed, and you implement all of them. Same with the design. Big design should be done off of well before you write code, well before it comes to the code review. So doing it in the code review process is way too late. Little bit of design reviews while you do code reviews is okay, because maybe it's a small thing. Therefore, the developer didn't think to ask anyone. So now you're seeing it here, and then this minor change, and it's done. As a code reviewer, you're essentially looking for higher readability and maintainability, whatever that means to the organization as per the guidelines and standards. The code needs to be readable and it needs to be maintainable. Right? First and foremost, of course, if there are performance issues, performance is another thing. I will nitpick about small things when it comes to performance. I'm not talking about squeezing out every, water from a rock. I'm talking about the little things that are very easy to do. For example, something is a string, some sort of an object, let's say, that you're working with. You don't necessarily know it to be a string because it's indexed into some sort of an indexer or whatever. And you put a toString on it. I'm going to tell you to remove the toString and cast it instead. Because it is a string, it just needs to be casted. ToString is a whole nother string instance. So that's not nitpicking. To me, that's a big deal, even though it's a small issue with regards to performance. In a large scale or a large application, it becomes a big problem. So I'm going to look at the small things. I'd rather not leave any performance on the table. Thus, you never have a performance issue. And you can't go back and clean up a system later. So yes, performance is something you should be looking at every step. But I'm not saying squeeze out every little bit of performance you can right away. I'm talking about the little things you could be doing. Like I talk about in PWI as well. A lot of them, even though they're not driven by the need for performance, are actually going to give you better performance in a larger system. These are good practices. Just follow them. Like, there's no need to have an argument about this stuff. Just do it. If something could be simply, easily made more performant, just do it. Right? It's readable? Yeah. Then it should be just written the way it is. You'd be surprised how many things you should be writing that is normal actually end up giving you better performance anyways. So I'm not asking you to contort your code and make it unreadable. The other thing you're looking for is the unhappy parts, right? And exceptions and the messages. Oh my gosh, when I see, you'll find that you have more unhappy parts, tests, than happy parts. But exception messages for me are key. If your exception messages are not going to be helpful and intuitive for somebody to see this in production, let's say a customer or maybe the people doing a triage on bugs and stuff like that in your system, or a team that's consuming your application, whatever the case is. If your exception messages are not clear, it's just not worth having exceptions. I don't know if you've seen my video on programming to exceptions. I'll probably put a link on it here, or just find it on my channel. Exceptions are a big deal. Very, very important to me. But exception messages are even more important. So I'm looking for that. Would I understand the problem with this exception message? That's key. What all information could you have given me when this exception occurred that would help me understand and fix the problem? Right? If you just throw out an exception and say, oh, sorry, it's not working, that's useless. So as a code reviewer, when you see the unhappy parts and the exceptions, you should also be looking at the exception messages. Not only would the code review process be simpler, quicker, easier, the coding will be simpler, quicker, easier if your designs are simple. I can't tell you how important that is. Simple is not easy. Simple is extremely difficult. If you can simplify rather than complicate, if you can simplicate, make things even simpler, you are king. Design and architecture is about simplification, not complicate. I think most architects don't get it. Most designers don't get this simple thing. They'll take the simple thing and make it so bloody complicated that it's like, what's the point of that? I call it resume-driven design. Resume-driven design. People are designing systems based on what they want to put on their resume. I think this, in the software field, this is all over the place. We need to stop this thing. Architecture is by intent. Just like you have programming with intent, I also have architecture with intent. Every decision you make architecturally and design-wise has to have a meaning and an intent. It has to fit the purpose. It can't just be something because you want to put it in there. This is, you're not designing a building where you want the shape to be a certain shape. Software architecture is more about doing the right thing, having the right technique, technology, framework, platform, whatever it is for that purpose. It's not about your whims and fancies and the buzzwords. But the more things you put into the system, the more complicated that system is going to get, the harder it's going to be to maintain and read the code of that system. And the more bugs you're going to have. Keep it simple. And simple is not easy. So anyway, with that, I hope this was an enjoyable video. I was trying to get across or talk both sides of the coin here. In the following videos from here, if you like this kind of thing and you want to see the next ones, please give me a thumbs up, give me a like, put a comment, ask me questions, whatever the case is, so I know that you're enjoying these and you want to see more of this. I'm hoping to make this some sort of I don't think it's going to be an endless series, but there'll be a series nonetheless, where in each of the following ones, I'll simply show you some code and highlight and point the issues and what and why and how to fix it. Right? So it'll be shorter videos, but it'll probably be 1 or 2 code samples in each one to just highlight certain things. So thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. Please give me a like, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I will see you next time.